Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how we've all been blindsided by the fact that the first by-election, Westminster by-election of this Parliament is actually going to be for a Labour MP. Pretty much like it was at the last Parliament. Down to naughtiness as well, would you believe it? But first, for daily political commentary, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So, yes, Mike Amesbury of Labour is basically going to have to resign or be kicked out of Parliament. He's certainly lost the Labour whip. So for those who don't know, I mean, he basically punched a voter. You can't do that. So first of all, what happened is we saw video emerging. Someone recorded it on their phone and he was threatening someone. Well, he was berating someone on the floor going, "You won't threaten me again, will you?" And you look at it and you think, okay, this looks bad. He looks like he's knocked this fella down. Pushed or punched, whatever, and that's the point at which someone's got their phone out and started recording it, and you start to think to yourself, what led up to it? You're thinking, is it like a John Prescott thing? Because, you know, John Prescott was physically assaulted. He just defended himself. Was this the same thing? Did the fella grab hold of the MP and the MP push him down? That was the best case scenario. This is not what occurred. Because then CCTV footage came out of the incident. And it clearly showed the MP and the voter, shall we say, the member of the public, talking to each other. It just looked like a normal conversation. Now, the Amesbury says that this guy was being threatening, and he seemed to genuinely believe he was being threatening, because when he knocked him down, he said, "You know, you won't threaten me again, will you?" It doesn't really matter what he says. He could have been saying the most horrendous things. You can't, like, if someone says the most horrendous things to me on the street, I don't punch them. I know how to punch as well, but I don't punch them. An MP has to be sort of wide and right. I've often said it's really unfair that MPs should have to, I mean, they shouldn't actually have to put up with, like, some of the abuse that some MPs get is criminal. And it's literally criminal, and sometimes people do get convicted for it. But if you're just going to have someone who's calling you all sorts of names because they don't like your politics, or they can't really berate them too much, I suppose, for what's happened. Well, they could. No, I mean, they could. They could have any number of grievances, right? It doesn't matter. You can't really punch someone. So, yeah, so the CCTV footage clearly showed a conversation. Doesn't matter what the member of the public was saying. The Labour MP then punched him to the ground and then carried on punching him when he was on the floor. And as soon as I saw that footage, I thought, yeah, he's gone. And then, sure enough, within a few hours, he's lost the Labour whip. So you think, so what happens now? I mean, losing the Labour whip doesn't automatically mean a by-election unless he resigns. No, so you go through the sort of options here. So what could happen? Well, first of all, unless he resigns from Parliament, nothing will happen for a long time. So we're not talking about a by-election in the new year. Amesbury is giving all the impression that he is that he thinks, it was a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I have to say, looking at it, I don't think it is, by the way. But he thinks, here's a defence. When the footage came out, he said he went to the police station to make a statement. So he's going to base it on the fact that, this guy has said something. There were people around. There may well be witnesses to what was said before the punch. Who knows? But the process will be, as long as he does not resign, so it will be up to the police to decide whether it's worth, or the CPS to decide whether it's worth charging him. If he's charged, then obviously there's court cases. In terms of automatic recall, now, if he is charged and he is convicted, and let's say he receives a custodial sentence, that would trigger a recall petition. I think the recall petition would succeed. It's a very safe Labour seat. We'll come on to that in a moment. But there won't be a Labour MP. There's no way, particularly if he's convicted, there's no way Labour are going to give him the whip back, right? So they'll be without a Labour MP. So even Labour voters will sign the recall petition so that they can get a Labour MP back. And no one wants an MP who goes around randomly punching the voters, right? So there will be a recall petition. It will succeed, I think, very likely to succeed. And as a result of that, a by-election would be triggered. But I don't know how soon the court case would be, so I don't know how soon he'd be convicted, probably sometime. The other thing to note is, because we saw this in the last Parliament, because a Labour MP then as well, Claudia Webb, was convicted and given a custodial sentence, but then there was a very long appeal process, and then the sentence was downgraded. The same thing could happen. He could appeal. I mean, again, at any point, he may just accept that he's done wrong, and he may just say, sorry, and accept it, and there'll be no appeals, and he will just resign. He will just resign as an MP. But assuming he fights it as far as he can, then there will be appeals, and these can take a long time. So you could be talking like 2 years down the line before anything happens, right? And then the other option, let's say he's not convicted, or let's say he's convicted but not given a custodial sentence, so then there's no automatic recall petition. But as soon as the legal process has concluded, or even before perhaps, I don't know whether they would wait, but the Standards Committee then comes into it. So the Standards Committee could simply say, regardless of what the courts say, that he has brought Parliament into disrepute. And do you know what? I think that's fairly open and shut, don't you? An MP who punches a voter without themselves being assaulted first, just based on words, someone just said something he didn't like. Depending on if there were witnesses who will attest to exactly what words were used, there may or may not be some sympathy for the MP's position, but I still think it's likely to be a clear case of bringing Parliament into disrepute, in which case the Standards Committee could then decide he's guilty of that, recommend a suspension. If that suspension is for 10 days, 10 sitting days or more, then that triggers a recall petition, and then the same thing happens. And I think it probably would. Remember, I think we're quite used to these days when the Standards Committee says, yes, you've done wrong, there's a fairly hefty suspension coming. But that's because MPs have been pretty shabby lately. But I'm going to suggest this. I would say punching a member of the public to the ground, even if it was provoked, but only verbally provoked, and then carrying on punching them when they're on the ground multiple times, and then wagging your finger and go, you won't threaten me again, which itself is quite threatening, isn't it? I would suggest that is more serious than looking at porn on your phone, and that earned itself a hefty suspension. So yes, I think come what may, Mike Amesbury is not going to be an MP come the next election. The real question is just how soon. If he fights it tooth and nail, you could well be talking a couple of years, unless, as I say, the Standards Committee decides to just launch its own investigation in parallel to the criminal investigation. I'm not sure whether they would do that, because often you don't like to be seen to be interfering in a criminal case. So yeah, I mean, but it could happen a lot sooner if he accepts, when the police talk to him properly or something like that, or his lawyer more specifically talks to him and says, yeah, you banged to rights, mate. You're only going to make this worse if you drag it out. Just admit your guilt. At which point it could be a lot quicker, and then he would be well advised to just resign. No one wants to go through the humiliation of being recalled. It's much better if it's inevitable, and it will be inevitable, to just resign from Parliament. In which case, then we could end up with that by-election occurring in the new year, and it being the first one of this Parliament, which I did not have, because we are expecting some by-elections. We don't know for certain, but we are expecting some Tory by-elections in the new year from two different sources. One, we don't know if either Rishi Sunak or Oliver Dowden, when they step aside as leader and deputy leader, respectively, of the Conservative Party, either or both of them may well decide to step down as MPs as well, deciding they can't be bothered just mucking about on the back benches. They may not do it straight away. They may wait till sometime next year, but that is a possibility. It's a possibility that at some point one or both of their seats comes up for a by-election. And then I've talked about this recently, there are, because of Labour's new rules, which have now come online, banning certain consultancy second jobs, there are quite a lot of Tory MPs not happy about that, and that's losing them a lot of money. And there are some Tory MPs who apparently have been telling their colleagues that if they don't get a decent position, like a shadow position within with the new leader when they are selected next week, that they'll just resign from Parliament. So we could well be expecting a little flutter of Conservative MP resignations in the new year. So yeah, we were sort of getting ready for maybe one or two, maybe a few more Conservative by-elections in the new year. Now we're looking at it and thinking, oh, actually the first one could be a Labour one for punching a constituent. Wow. But there we go. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can press the join button for memberships. Until next time, I'll see you later.